The Russian army focused its efforts on destroying a series of strongholds in eastern Ukraine. America is trying to prevent large-scale conflict in the Middle East. Russia unleashed its entire arsenal and destroyed a series of bases in eastern Ukraine. Russian forces have made significant advances in a narrow corridor in eastern Ukraine as Kiev awaits military aid from the west. Video posted by Russian military bloggers showed the Russian flag flying above the village of Okeratyne, which was devastated by the fighting. Russian soldiers are believed to have entered this territory on April 21, northwest of the city of Avdiivka, after advancing about 5 kilometers in 10 days. Ukrainian troops withdrew from Avdiivka in February and are trying to establish a new defense line in settlements along the Derna River. But in recent weeks, reinforced Russian units have stepped up their offensive, using air-launched glide bombs to destroy Ukrainian bunkers. Moscow's Ministry of Defense announced that Ukrainian troops withdrew from Okeratyne in small groups and under fierce fire. Video showed an administrative building destroyed, windows blown out, and streets littered with debris. The civilians seem to have left. Controlling this area means Russia has overcome the northern flank of the new line recently built by Ukraine, which includes minefields and trenches. The village of Okeratyne, once home to 3,000 people and a regional road and rail hub, lies at the intersection of the defense network. The regional command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine admitted that the situation was very difficult. They said Russia was using its entire arsenal against units of Ukraine. Russia captured several buildings and the southern part of Okeratyne. However, Kiev added that most of the village remained in the hands of Ukrainian forces and the situation was under control. Russian forces are about 30 kilometers from Pokrovsk, the main garrison city in the region and a place used to rotate troops and equipment. This seems to be Russia's next operational target. President Vladimir Putin is said to have ordered Russian soldiers to control the administrative borders of the Donetsk region. Further north, a large-scale Russian offensive is underway to take control of the city of Chasiv Yar. Ukraine's Eastern Military Command said 20,000 to 25,000 Russian troops were trying to attack the hilltop city and surrounding areas. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky predicts that Russia wants to control Chasiv Yar before May 9, when Moscow celebrates the annual victory over fascism. America's efforts to prevent conflict engulf the Middle East. The risk of the Middle East sinking into large-scale war appeared earlier this month, after Tehran accused Tel Aviv of attacking the Iranian embassy in Syria. On the evening of April 1, an Israeli fighter jet was accused of launching a missile from the Golan Heights into the Syrian capital of Damascus, hitting the consulate building inside the Iranian embassy. Syrian air defense cannot intercept all missiles. The attack caused the consulate to collapse, killing 16 people, including 7 Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC) advisors who were meeting inside. IRGC confirmed that 2 of their generals, Mohammad Reza Zahidi and Mohammad Hadi Haji Rahimi, were on the list of dead from the raid. Just minutes earlier, an Israeli official informed the U.S. that a raid was underway, but did not elaborate on the target or location, according to unnamed U.S. officials. The White House also soon learned about another surprise Israeli attack that occurred that same day. Israeli drones attacked an aid convoy in Gaza, killing 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen charity. 2 raids in one day began 19 days of the U.S. racing to prevent the Middle East crisis from escalating into an all-out war in the Middle East. Not long after the raid in Damascus, Israeli Ambassador Michael Herzog and the country's defense attaché were present at the White House, when U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top aides held an online meeting with officials in Tel Aviv. During an exchange on the sidelines of the meeting, Herzog explained that Israel had targeted Zahidi and other high-ranking Iranian officers, according to U.S. officials. As the U.S. and Israel wait for a response from Iran, some predict Tehran will directly attack Tel Aviv's territory, something it has never done before. U.S. officials fear that Israel's raid could potentially trigger attacks from Iran's proxy forces on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, where about 4,500 U.S. soldiers and citizens are present. They also speculate Tehran could attack Israeli embassies abroad in response. After the attack on the embassy in Syria, Iran asked the Swiss embassy in Tehran to send the U.S. a written message, blaming them for the attack in harsh words, according to U.S. officials. Washington denies involvement. 2 days after the attack in Damascus, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin appeared angry in a call with his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant, criticizing Gallant for not mentioning this plan despite meeting him at the Pentagon one day. Week before that, according to sources familiar with the matter, the death of 2 IRGC generals in the raid made Iran very angry. After failing to get the United Nations Security Council to condemn the attack, Tehran signaled it would retaliate. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi announced on April 3 that the raid cannot go without a response. Tensions occur when U.S.-Israel relations are at their lowest level. In a phone call on April 4, U.S. President Joe Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that international support for Tel Aviv was seriously declining after the attack on the aid convoy. Mr. Biden added that Israel needs to allow more humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip and reduce civilian casualties, affirming that U.S. support will be based on an assessment of Tel Aviv's actual actions. But the White House boss also told Mr. Netanyahu that the U.S. supports Israel in dealing with Iran. The U.S. president ordered the Pentagon to increase efforts to protect Israel, and the U.S. military activated top-secret plans to support Tel Aviv in case of crisis. When the U.S. president welcomed the Japanese Prime Minister at the White House on April 10, Secretary Austin pulled Mr. Biden aside and asked for permission to turn around the USS Carney, a destroyer on its way from the Middle East back to its home port, Florida. The USS Carney, along with the destroyer USS Arleigh Burke in the eastern Mediterranean, are close enough to assist Israel in monitoring and shooting down missiles in the event of an Iranian attack. Mr. Biden agreed with this request. A group of U.S. military personnel also secretly went to Tel Aviv to join their Israeli counterparts at a Missile Defense Command Center, planning to deal with a potential attack. Predicting that Iran will deploy unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to attack, F-15E fighter teams have been deployed to the area to support Israel's defense. An F-16 fighter squadron stationed in the area also participated in this campaign. Saudi Arabia and Jordan aircraft are also preparing for defense plans. The aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower, at that time in the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen, moved close to Israel so it could deploy fighters to intercept any UAVs launched by the Iran-backed Houthi group. In parallel with preparing combat plans, Mr. Biden's senior aides also continuously called foreign partners, asking them to persuade Iran not to retaliate against Israel. CIA Director William Burns has asked intelligence agencies in Europe, the Middle East and Turkey to urge Tehran to de-escalate. Even while watching Iran move missiles from its stockpile and put them on launch pads, the scale of Iran's attack plan remains a big question for U.S. intelligence. Some intelligence reports predict Tehran may target only Israeli diplomatic facilities or other locations abroad. However, after several days of waiting without seeing Iran launch a missile, U.S. and Israeli intelligence officials believe that Tehran intends to carry out a large-scale direct attack on Israeli territory. The question now is when it will happen and what the goal is. General Eric Kurilla, commander of U.S. forces in the Middle East, arrived in Israel on April 11 and planned to stay here until Iran attacked, but Secretary of Defense Austin ordered Kurilla to leave immediately, out of concern. Afraid that the U.S. could be seen by Iran as complicit in any response by Tel Aviv, General Kurilla then participated in online discussions with the Israeli side from Jordan. Until Mr. Biden left for the weekend in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware on the evening of April 12, Iran's attack plan became clearer. We have clearer and more certain intelligence about the time Iran plans to attack, U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said. President Biden rushed back to Washington, D.C. on the afternoon of April 13. When Iran's attack began on the evening of April 13, U.S. officials in the Situation Room at the White House and the Pentagon monitored more than 300 UAVs, cruise missiles and ballistic missiles being launched from airspace. Iran, crossing Iraq and Jordan, rushed towards Israel. Even with some intelligence information, the scale of the raid surprised U.S. officials, according to close sources. Its scale is beyond what we expected, a senior official said. More than 150 UAVs were deployed by Iran in the first launch and are expected to take 5 to 7 hours to reach Israeli territory. Then more than 30 cruise missiles were launched, with a travel time of about 2 to 3 hours. Finally, Iran deployed more than 100 ballistic missiles that could reach Israeli territory in just a few dozen minutes. Iran timed the launch of its weapons so that they could reach Israeli territory at the same time, to overwhelm Tel Aviv's defense system. They have prioritized military targets over civilian ones, such as the Nevatim base in the Negev Desert, where Israel has deployed F-35 stealth fighters. The defense plan previously prepared by Israel and its allies was effective, helping to intercept 99% of Iran's weapons and protecting the country from what was considered the most intense attack in decades. Israel's aero defense system intercepted most of the ballistic missiles, while 2 U.S. regional ships in the eastern Mediterranean shot down several others. The U.S. Patriot battery in Erbil, Iraq successfully intercepted a missile. Fighters from the U.S., UK, France, and Israel shot down Iranian UAVs from afar. Immediately after Israel survived the raid with negligible damage, the White House switched from protecting Israel to restraining this close ally. On April 13, U.S. time, Mr. Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu had a tense phone call. The White House boss advised Mr. Netanyahu, who is attending a meeting with the War Cabinet after the raid, to consider carefully the next step, because he believes that Israel has won in the confrontation with Iran. He mentioned that Israel had eliminated Iran's military commanders in Lebanon and Syria, as well as defeated Tehran's large-scale raid.